Currently, Israeli society is gradually collapsing. The war has gone on for too long, the front lines have expanded too much, and the internal structure of society is slowly falling apart. Today, let's take a proper look at this issue. Let's get right into it. Let me begin with some shocking news. The psychological after effects appearing within the Israeli military are accumulating much faster than expected. In particular, there has been an explosive increase in the number of reservists seeking help from dedicated organizations that treat post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety disorders. Previously, about 270 people per year received treatment, but after the war, this rose to about 3,000 in a few years. Demand increased over tenfold. Notably, there is concern the true number of people with psychological trauma may be much higher. Data from the Israeli National Insurance Institute and Ministry of Defense show a sharp rise in the number of people officially recognized as having war-related mental illness, increasing from about 6,400 to over 69,000 in the past 3 years, based on official figures. Experts think the real scale could be much larger if those not in current statistics are considered. In particular, it is known that in many cases, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder appear more prominently sometime after the war has ended, rather than immediately afterward. During combat, symptoms may not appear due to the focus on missions and the state of tension, but after returning to daily life, many experience insomnia, severe anxiety, depression, and emotional regulation disorders. Due to these factors, experts caution this rise may be just the start, not the end. There are also concerns that in the future, a significant number of the hundreds of thousands of veterans and civilians may experience delayed trauma responses, which could have a long-term impact on society as a whole. In the Israeli military, as soldiers take their own lives, more voices are saying mental health is no longer just a personal issue. According to Israeli media reports, at least 10 Israeli soldiers and 2 police officers have taken their own lives just since the beginning of 2026. Haaretz analyzed that a significant number of them suffered severe psychological trauma during the prolonged military operations in the Gaza Strip. Notably, reports that 6 active duty soldiers died by suicide in April alone have deeply shocked the military. Analysis also indicates this phenomenon did not emerge suddenly. According to Israeli sources, 22 conscripted soldiers took their own lives in 2025, which is reported to be the highest number in the past 15 years. Israeli media reported that prolonged operations in the Gaza Strip, repeated combat deployments, and a constant state of tension have greatly increased the psychological burden on soldiers, according to their assessment. As the war continues, fatigue and anxiety build up, and some after effects persist even after discharge.
Are being reported.
Additionally, the war's aftermath affected more than just the soldiers. Abnormal signs are also emerging in Israeli society. According to various sources, domestic violence has increased by about 65%, and it is reported that 1/3 of the entire population is suffering from insomnia. Among veterans, cases of alcohol and psychotropic drug abuse are also increasing. With continuous air raid warnings, nighttime sirens, and repeated emergency evacuations becoming a part of daily life, citizens' mental exhaustion is mounting rapidly. As conditions that make it difficult to maintain normal sleep and daily life persist, there is growing recognition that the trauma of war is spreading beyond the military to society as a whole. Another noteworthy change is that Israel's brain drain is becoming increasingly serious. As the war continues, more people feel uncertain about the future, and more are choosing to start new lives abroad. It is known that between 2022 and 2024, more than 125,000 citizens have emigrated abroad. There is growing concern because many leaving are key professionals like medical experts, scientists, and high-tech engineers. In fact, in 2024, the net outflow of Israeli university graduates became negative for the first time in several years. More highly skilled, locally educated people are moving abroad than coming back. Experts predict that this trend could continue in 2025 and 2026, depending on the economic and security situation. The composition of overseas migrants is also showing a different pattern compared to before. Data from Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics shows about 60% of immigrants in 2023 were highly educated, holding at least a bachelor's degree, with many aged 25 to 45 the most economically active group. There is also analysis that the long-term burden may increase, as the age group that plays a key role in the labor market and industrial sites is leaving. The longer the war continues, the faster the economic burden that Israel has to bear is growing. Ongoing high defense and military spending is putting significant pressure on government finances. Since the war started, national spending has surged due to higher costs for reserve mobilization, weapons procurement, interceptions, and interceptor missile operations, and damage recovery.
As a result, the
fiscal deficit is rising quickly, forcing the government to raise funds by issuing more bonds and adjusting the budget. This financial strain is impacting the private economy. In this situation of growing uncertainty, more companies are postponing new investments and business expansions, and foreign investors are also carefully reviewing their investment plans. Since it's difficult to predict when the war will end, it's not easy for companies to make long-term business plans. Some analyses say domestic industries like tourism, consumer spending, and construction are directly impacted by the ongoing war. International credit rating agencies are closely watching this situation. With concerns that ongoing war could weaken the country's fiscal health, Israel's sovereign credit rating and outlook have also changed. If the credit rating is downgraded or the outlook turns negative, it will likely raise borrowing costs for the government and companies, creating a significant burden during future economic recovery. Experts worry that if the war continues, defense spending burdens and slower economic growth may happen at the same time. There is also a possibility that additional measures, such as tax increases or adjustments to the welfare budget, will be discussed to protect the national finances. It is expected that the longer the war continues, the greater the burden on the overall economy will become. However, it does not seem likely that the war will end easily. Many people believe that the reason Israel continues its military operations is due to Prime Minister Netanyahu's personal political calculations. His political judgment matters too, but given Israel's current political structure, it's unfair to blame just one person.
The current coalition.
The coalition government shares power among several parties, with some partners pushing for a tougher security stance than Netanyahu.
A representative example.
One example is Minister of National Security Itamar
Ben-Gvir.
He is known as a politician who has consistently called for a hardline response to issues in Gaza, Lebanon, and the West Bank. He has repeatedly expressed the opinion that military operations should be expanded and has shown a negative attitude toward resolving issues through ceasefires or negotiations. For these reasons, there has been ongoing analysis in the international community that hardliners within the coalition, including Ben-Gvir, are exerting considerable influence over the Israeli government's security policies. Prime Minister Netanyahu now finds it hard to ignore this political reality. Because the coalition government is maintained based on the seats of multiple parties, if hardline parties leave the coalition, there is a possibility that the coalition could lose its majority. Some hardline politicians have warned they may leave the coalition if the government agrees to a ceasefire or reduces military operations. This shows that both diplomatic and domestic politics must be considered together. This political structure is a major factor that complicates predicting the Middle East's future. Even if a ceasefire is achieved, it is difficult to rule out the possibility of continued military tension or limited clashes in the border areas, and the policy direction could change at any time depending on the political interests within the coalition government. Another challenge for Israel is the international community's increasingly unfavorable view. As the war drags on, criticism of Israel's military operations has become much stronger, especially in Europe. Some countries are moving to restrict arms exports or apply stricter export approval procedures, and there are also calls to reconsider the scope of military cooperation. These actions are being reviewed for potential impacts on diplomacy, security, and the defense industry.
Pressure through international organizations is also continuing.
International organizations and human rights groups continue investigating and criticizing Israel's military actions, while legal debates at the International Court of Justice and International Criminal Court persist. In response, Israel is emphasizing its right to self-defense and refuting the criticism, but in the international community, controversy over the conduct of the war is not easily subsiding. If this diplomatic pressure continues, Israel may face additional burdens not only in terms of security and social issues, but also in the economic sector. Deteriorating international relations could impact military cooperation, trade, and the investment climate. Therefore, experts analyze that when looking at the future situation in the Middle East, we should pay attention not only to the state of the war, but also to the response of the international community and diplomatic developments.